Hello, welcome to another episode of Somewhere Between a film and TV podcast. We are your hosts. I am Daniel Parra.
And I'm Erwin Trejo.
And thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time, hopefully you stick around. Erwin?
Sorry. I just said stick.
What?
I'm sorry. I just think of a stick and then I just laugh.
You laugh at the word stick?
I'm sorry. I'm not high or anything.
You just...
I just to clarify.
Okay. What do we like to do here?
Not talk about TV, apparently.
We'll do it one day. We've done it a couple times. No, we'll talk about Andor. I'm putting that out there so I can get you to watch it.
Oh, great. Okay.
But if you've never listened to us before, everything we review has full spoilers. I thought we could get away with reviewing this one with no spoilers, but there is a lot I want to talk about thematically in this movie.
Whoa, thematically.
Yes, sir.
Spell it.
What? Erwin.
Spell it.
Oh my god. THEM.
I mean, counting the letters.
I majored in this, dude.
Thematics?
No. Well, I mean, that's part of English. English and film, man.
Alright, just, okay.
Anyway, what are we reviewing? Wait, can I say it? Can I say it? I want to say it.
Okay.
Late Night with the Devil.
Ooh!
Starring...
It's April, guys.
Honestly, yeah.
I have to remind you.
My one major qualm about this movie is not in the movie itself.
Yeah.
It's the fact that this should have come out in October. But this movie has a really cool story behind it. And I want to get into that and more. But specifically, talking to Erwin about this.
Hey.
What was your expectation going into this? What had you heard about it? This one is different for us because it is a very small movie.
Okay. Oh, so I can talk about it now?
Yeah. What did you think?
Okay. So I haven't seen any trailers for it. I've only seen the poster and then some reviews for it. And the reviews were all saying amazing things about this movie, right? And that's all I got from just from all those things I've seen from it. And so after the movie was over, I was really shocked when I came out of that theater, just because I genuinely loved that movie.
Yeah.
But wait, go ahead. Like, what did you think? Or like, how did you know about this movie? Or like, what did you think about it
So
beforehand?
This movie proves that you can get by on huge word of mouth. This was initially in a lot of different film festivals, and David Dastmalchian is one of my favorite actors ever. I love practically everything he does. Every performance he gives is so varied, and he has a look, a very specific look, and he can convey so many different things with just his eyes. He can be sympathetic, he can be crazy, he can show that he's not all there. I remember my introduction to him specifically is in The Dark Knight.
Mine was The Prisoners.
Oh, because you don't remember?
I didn't remember The Dark Knight like that.
Yeah.
I remember Prisoners.
And he's so great in that too. It's that like look he's able to give.
Yes.
And you just don't know what his character that he's playing is thinking all the time. And so him getting a lead performance makes me really excited because he's actually never been the lead in anything before. This is his first lead performance, and I hope that this means that he can carry more blockbusters, bigger movies. He does have a very specific kind of character actor thing to him, though, that I don't know if they'd obviously never make him like the leading man in an action movie or something.
Majority of times, though, he chooses his projects, though, too.
Yeah.
And I remember reading, too, that he specifically loves anything monster or horror aspects. And so he tries to go for, like, movies similar to that.
He's one of those people that I love looking at interviews for, because I've heard that he's, like, one of the nicest people working in Hollywood. And he has his energy in interviews is way different than his characters in movies. He seems like the nicest person in the world.
Yeah.
But this had been premiering at film festivals, and it was really starting to take off because it's a Shudder original, and I've heard a lot of great things about Shudder, that they have a lot of underseen horror movies on there.
Okay.
That's why this... Okay, but preface this. The Family Guy joke that was on Twitter that was trending about this movie is true. The logos go on forever.
Dude.
I was like...
I forgot about that. When that was happening, I was like, damn, was there like 10 of these?
It was do you remember the Family Guy clip I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember. But the fact you brought that up, that just clicked with me again.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I remember like throughout the entire first 2 minutes, I thought I was like, oh, they're going to play another fucking trailer on me. But no, it was like 10 different logos.
No, and that's what the joke is in Family Guy. So Peter Griffin.
I'm tired of Family Guy. Wait, let me play some Subway Surfers while you explain Family Guy.
They go to a theater and then the logo keeps happening. It's like, oh, is this a movie? Oh, is this the movie?
That's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, so it's literally just that. Oh. So whenever they go to the TV thing, I was like, is this another logo? And it was actually the movie. I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, man.
No, man, I adored this movie. I don't think...
Is it closed?
No.
Oh, can I come in?
Sure. Are you a vampire?
I mean,
only vampires ask for permission.
Well, okay, but I think I'm just.
This is like whenever I text you, I'm here, and you're like, "Why didn't you just knock on the door?" I'm like, "Well, I don't." Can I just text you?
All right, go ahead, continue.
And so, the theatrical release of this actually wasn't even initially planned. It was supposed to go straight to Shudder, and then they put it.
What's Shudder?
It is a streaming service. I know.
Okay.
But a lot of people really like this one. For just horror.
Also, Shudder's just horror movies.
Oh, only horror movies. I'm surprised Terrifier's not on there, but that's on a different one. It's called Screambox.
Oh, okay.
Which that one's like $1 a month, which is sort of like Shudder. But
what do you think? Which one do you prefer?
Of those two?
Yeah.
I mean, I really like both Terrifier movies, which I do want to bring up again because there is one specific element of this movie that reminds me of those.
Yeah, I can see that.
But probably Shudder. I mean, I don't actually have it, but the couple of things
which one do you prefer, Terrifier or Terrifier 2?
Terrifier 2, for sure.
Oh, I prefer the first one over the second.
Really?
Yeah.
Since when? I thought you liked the second one way more than you liked the first one.
No, I think I like them both equally, but if I choose, I think I like the first one more than the second one.
I think the second one has way better acting.
Yes, I agree with that.
We feel different about gore, and I liked.
My issue wasn't the gore though. My issue was the element, like the sci-fi element.
Yeah.
Of something being spiritual or something or all that. That's where it bothered me because it didn't really have that in the first one.
It was just sort of a straightforward.
Yes, and that's what I enjoyed about it more than the second one, because then that it takes away the factor of, oh, are these characters gonna live or die?
That's true.
And that's the part for me. Okay, well,
because Art is supposed to be just sort of like a, he ends up being a demonic entity, which you get the vibe from the first one, but in the second one it's straight on confirmed.
And then I guess when I was thinking about it too, where the little girl that shows up in Terrifier 2, I didn't understand her purpose there.
I think the purpose of her is definitely probably just shock value, to be entirely honest with you. And those are the types of movies where some of it you kind of have to go, what movie am I watching? Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, what is the intent here? And sometimes the intent isn't to really be anything but provocative.
Okay.
Because those movies are going for something very specific, and it's that sort of shock splatter factor. Yeah. It's why those movies aren't the most popular thing in the world, because they really do go for that. And I really like them for that. And I actually do really like the world building in the second one. That's where you and I differ.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still do, but I think, I guess like in the world building, it's just more of that element, because the moment when the main character, her, gets, in a sense, resurrected as well. Oh, right. And comes back, it's just, it kind of loses it for me. Yeah. Because then I'm like, so then everyone's safe. Because, of course, Terrifier is still alive.
The ones that aren't are just whichever humans they run into. Yes. Because I know that those movies are mean. Yes. And the meanest thing in the world is that bedroom scene.
Yeah, that was Yeah.
But it's really well done, and the reason why these movies are on my mind is because they come from a similar craft and background.
Yeah.
And I guess since we're already bringing this up, the moment I do want to touch on that reminds me of the Terrifier movies is specifically the segment with the hypnotism
Okay.
and the worms.
Oh, yes. I see that.
It was just this sort of... I got really annoyed because when we were going into the movies the other day, the lady was asking us, what are we going to see? And I said, oh, we're seeing Late Night with the Devil. And she said, oh, it's so great. And the way people constitute spoilers is different from other people.
Yeah.
I guess we can go into that right now. What do you think a spoiler is? Like, what would you not want to know going into a movie?
I don't know. I don't want to know any specific scenes, any lines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to know who shows up in a movie.
Yeah.
Honestly, I genuinely just don't know. I don't. Sometimes if I don't even know the plot right away, I don't want to know the plot.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if I would just rather hear somebody saying, "Hey, do you know this movie? Are you gonna go see it?" It's like, yes, I heard about it. I know nothing about it. And if I ask them like, "What did you think?" I just want them to say, "I either enjoyed it or I didn't. You should go see it. If it's worth seeing in theaters."
Yeah.
Type of thing. That's the only thing I would really care about. But other than that, like, I genuinely don't want to be spoiled by anything else. Of like, oh, this is so funny. There's this scene. This is like, no.
Yeah.
I just want to know if it's worth watching.
At the end of the day, if I could, I would definitely just want to know, well, what's the genre?
Yeah.
What is the general kind of what it's about?
Yeah.
And, like, for example, another Spider-Man movie, I don't need to hear or see anything from it. I will go see it.
Spider-Man? Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm already seen it. I already bought my ticket.
Yeah, like, I don't need to know. Whenever we were walking in, she was like, oh, it's so great. And I thought it was funny because she was explaining to me, like, the way it came to be. And I was like, I kind of know this already. But
Damn.
And she was like, yeah, there's, like, a body horror element to it. And usually I don't like that. And I was like, fuck, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
And so I was going into it. I was like, man,
I ruined the best part.
I didn't want to know that because then I spent half the movie going like,
when is it gonna happen?
Yeah, what is she talking about?
And that's why I don't like spoilers like that too, because you just expect it like, all right, when is that scene gonna happen?
Yeah.
Right. Or it's like if you're watching a comedy, they're like, oh, there's this one scene that's so funny, and they explain the scene,
and they explain the joke, and then you wait for it, and you're like, okay, well, it was funny to you, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm like, you ruined the punchline because you told me beforehand that this scene's supposed to be funny, and so when I expect it to be like the funniest thing ever, and it just happens.
That's like whenever the things trend scenes, but only explanations of the scene because nobody
yes.
has recorded yet. I'm like, okay, well, can I actually see it?
Yes.
Or whenever people like to do stuff on Twitter where they take specific moments out of context and go like, haha, look at how silly this is. And I'm like, I'm sure this makes more sense in the context.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's like, these 4 images will make sense after you see the movie.
I do actually kind of like those.
I like those. Or they use like SpongeBob scenes.
The out of context ones, and then they use those.
I love that.
No, but there was a whole thing about this movie where it wasn't supposed to get the theatrical release initially, and then word of mouth has really been carrying it. And then I noticed that it was at a different Alamo that wasn't ours, and it was just one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to drive like 50 minutes or however long it is to go see it.
Yeah.
And then I saw that it was at Lakeline.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I want to see it, like, because I feel like I need to see this in a theater if possible, if it's getting this kind of traction and this kind of word of mouth. I can actually see this working really well on a TV because it's the format that it's played in. But this movie is creative as hell and really sticks.
Demon.
Oh, that too, yeah.
Oh.
Really sticks to its aesthetic. It does not betray itself at all. I had not seen a trailer either for it. Yes. I did that on purpose. Okay. Because I didn't want to know anything, and I figured, hey, this movie's small enough that I doubt I'll even get a trailer. Yeah. Anyway. Mm-hmm. Off note thing, we don't really mention this that much. That poster is amazing.
Yeah. I look back at that poster and I love it so much. I don't know. I can't wait to own this movie. Yeah. I want to see this movie again.
If it gets a physical release.
It probably will. I would love to own that movie.
What did you think of it overall? What did you think about it?
I think what I loved about it, I loved the setting.
Yeah,
right?
the 70s, like...
Yes.
Yeah.
And just in the one location that they were in the entire time. I enjoyed all that. It kind of had me lost for a bit in the very beginning when they were just explaining the times, the decades, explaining like the cults and how people were feeling during that time. And I only felt lost during that time just because I was like, oh, okay, like where's this going?
Yeah.
Right. And so the moment when the show actually starts happening in the movie, the late night show, I was hooked. Right. And it just wouldn't, to me at least, it just wouldn't stop. And I loved how they brought other elements from what people think when it comes to like the cults and everything in the real world.
Right, yeah.
Of like I don't know what are they called? From the I was just talking about this earlier.
Whatever they're called. You're talking about the cult, right?
Yeah, the cult from
the
like
Grove?
The Grove, yeah. From California, the redwoods and everything.
Right, because there was a whole thing about them recently too, and we were just talking about that.
Yeah. And so I've always been fascinated by that. And so when that was brought up, I was like, oh my God, I'm into this now even more.
Because you're a big conspiracy theory person. Yeah.
Why did you say it like that?
Because you are.
I mean, I am, yes.
Are they in your walls?
No?
Are they in your walls?
They are.
I'm in your walls.
Yeah, I would love that. Why is there a hole right there?
Like my eye. Like, hey.
Hey.
Changing?
Yeah, I'm trying. But I loved everything about this movie. And I think what makes this movie stand out even more so is the fact that it was filmed like if you were watching a late night show.
Yeah.
And seeing how the camera worked around the other actors in this movie, I loved. Because it felt so genuine and so real. And that, I just can't stop thinking about it.
So, outside of the 2-minute intro of logos.
Yeah. Dude, I forgot about that.
I liked the explanation of the stuff that you were talking about beforehand. Yes. But I think that might lead towards but keep in mind, this is one of those movies where if I watch it again, I'd probably just abandon this flaw and give it 5 stars, which I'm already kind of ruining my rating a little bit in advance.
Hey.
Because
me too.
I didn't give it 5 stars.
I gave it 5 stars.
But I'm telling you that I think I will, just based off another reviewing of it. It's one of those things where we talk about our ratings changing over time, and I feel like this one just would, because I was talking about how I did that with Tar, and that one just was on my mind for so long that I was like, why would I not? Same thing happened with Anatomy of a Fall earlier this year. That one, same exact thing. You just gotta let things sit with you a little bit longer sometimes. But the introduction of that I really liked, because I think they understand that they want you in a specific time period. They want to introduce specific concepts to be on your mind while you're watching this, and you don't quite know that yet. But I thought that was a really interesting storytelling technique to do that.
Yes.
Because then you go into it like, okay, whatever I was just shown must be important in some way. They wouldn't just say that.
Yeah.
So once it fully introduces itself into the actual talk show stuff itself, I love the way it is structured, because you kind of forget what you're even watching.
Yeah.
The early on stuff, the way it plays out like a real thing happening, the talk show, interspliced with the black and white behind the scenes footage.
Yeah.
Is genuinely so well done and creative, and the bounce back and forth. And I like the full commitment that this movie's basically in 4:3. There's like a couple scenes where it breaks the expanded aspect ratio.
That's whenever it goes great, like gray and everything, right?
Yeah, or whenever it goes in color towards the end, but that's because it's no longer in the show format. It's in the traveling of his past, present, and whatever.
The last, I'm probably guessing like 20 minutes or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Of that movie, I loved so much, and it's just because you feel what the character's going. I felt like what the character was going through.
Yeah.
Him, or like the host of the show, and it was just nonstop, and it just kept going, and especially at the very end.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I just can't get over it.
So I don't know what you think of late night talk shows in general.
Oh, I mean, they're fine.
Yeah.
I think I see more scenes or like clips from the shows than actually watching it, because I don't really watch a lot of show or late night like shows or whatever.
The ones that I used to really like watching were individual interviews with. It was always Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Kimmel.
Okay.
And this one really reminds me of. Obviously, they have this whole dynamic where there's the lead and then there's the secondary person that is sort of the sidekick.
Yes.
And the sidekick guy in this is amazing.
Yes.
I loved him. And I horror movies always do this thing where they take the most likable person and then kill them gruesomely.
Yeah.
I'm like, man. And
remember when he said, like, in the very beginning, where it's like, if... What he says, like, but something, him turning his head or something, and it happened to him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So this movie also has that feeling that we were talking about with Civil War, but in a different way, where you're just like, I am so uneasy.
Yeah, I am so uncomfortable. Like, how is the audience still there?
Yeah.
Type of feeling.
And there are just individual moments where there are just things that are just so, like, a little bit off.
Yes.
And it's the thing that gives you even more of a feeling of, like, there is just something not right here. Mm-hmm. And the first one is the guy in the skeleton costume.
Yes.
Where he just, like,
no
stares
acknowledgement
straight.
or nothing.
Yeah.
And then you see him again at the very end.
I think they make a joke about him too. And the reason why I wanted to touch on full spoilers about this was because of the theme of this, and that it is basically the idea of selling your soul. And the whole phrase made me wonder how this movie's idea came about, because it is essentially selling your soul to the devil, turn of phrase. And the sort of initial reveal, kind of the hint of it when the demon first comes out, is a feeling of not betrayal yet, but it reminds you that personas are different than the real people behind them. Because one of the reasons why I liked the back and forth of the behind the scenes and the actual interview show so much is because David Dastmalchian is able to balance between the performer, the person putting on the show, and then whenever they're in the back behind the scenes, he's not necessarily a bad person, but you can feel that desperation and that unease, and just the idea that he was like, I need to get this to be number one. And the sort of process of that is great. Did you like the early segment stuff with, like, the guests and...
Oh, yes. Like what's his name?
First, what are they called? The mediums. The guy that was, like, the sort of cheap kind of fake...
Oh, when it's, like, guessing the names and everything? Yes, I did enjoy that as well. And I loved how, like, that slow build of him feeling uncomfortable, and then, like, when he first, like, his eyes started rolling back and he started saying, like, a certain name.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Minnie. And that was affecting the host and all. I don't know. It's just, like, everything about it, right? Where, especially when the whole interview of the demon started happening, that's when I felt so uneasy afterwards. I just could not get over it. And then the other guy that tries to prove everything wrong.
The one that he reminded me of someone we know.
Yeah. He's like, this is not real.
Yeah, he's like, let me tell you everything that was wrong.
with what you just did and say.
Yeah.
You're like, damn. And oh man, it just felt so sad. I don't know why, but at the same time, it felt so satisfying when they went back and saw the
real, real. Yeah.
And it's like, well, one of you guys must have did some editing and everything. You're like, dude, what do you mean?
You can't even just, like, disprove that because the tension building here. I love horror movies a lot. We've brought this up before. There's always a creative outlet to change how you make something happen, though, to make it scary. And this sort of analog approach, people talk about found footage.
Yes. There's
not been a found footage movie in a while. Do you remember that craze? Like, what did you think about it whenever it was happening?
I mean, last thing I know about it was, I think they're making a remake for Blair Witch.
Oh, yeah. There was just a remake for Blair Witch.
They're doing another one again.
Yeah.
I love the concept and the idea, because I do think at the end of the day, there's always going to be a horror element when it comes to found footage.
There's, like, a rawness to it.
And I think the only flaw that I have with those, and it's just a major thing, is the lack of what you see, and it's just a lot of it comes down to sound, and then
That's
the
true.
sound feels so repetitive, and you just don't feel anything.
They have a limited scope sometimes, but that's what horror movies are. You find what you can do
Yes.
with the minimal budget that you have.
Yeah.
And sometimes horror movies got away with that with found footage for a little bit too long because it was just like, hey, you don't technically have to show any of it. You can just like shake the camera a lot.
Basically.
And that was the thing.
Them start running and breathing heavily.
Yeah.
And go, what is that? What is that? And then it's like they do like that fast cam thing. And it's like the whatever monster it may be, it's like very blurry.
And so they don't really have to
show it. Yeah.
And suspiciously, there were always jump scares at it. And for whatever reason, found footage specifically really wanted to integrate jump scares into it, and that became associated along with it. I think it must have been a Paranormal Activity thing.
Oh yeah.
Which I never really gravitated towards. Even
I never enjoyed them. They are all the same. They really are.
Even the ones that have the ones that are considered good, like 3, I thought was okay.
Yeah.
And 2 was also just fine.
It's because like the last 10 minutes is when things start to happen. You actually see it happening. Because every other time you don't see anything. You barely see like a paperclip move.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, something moved.
And don't get me wrong, I enjoy, like, I don't know if you saw Skinamarink.
No.
That has a similar DNA to this, but what happens in that movie is it's basically found footage, but you intentionally can't make out a lot of the image.
Make out?
Not that kind of make out. You want to make out of the movie?
No.
I'm going to turn the audio off right now.
Turn it on, turn it off!
What had happened with that movie is it got really popular in film festivals because it had this sort of... Do you remember creepypastas?
That sounds familiar.
What a creepypasta is one of those like scary stories like that they tell at night to Redditors, basically.
Oh, yes. I do remember you talking about that.
And that's where Slender Man kind of comes from. But that's a whole other thing. This one...
I just watched a YouTube video about Slender Man
a while
ago, yeah.
No, that whole era...
That's why I think that's why I heard creepypastas from too. Again.
Yeah.
That's why, why does that sound familiar?
It's that whole era of like analog video games where it's like Pikachu's gonna kill you in the Game Boy, and
no,
you're like, you remember the SpongeBob episode that was never found, and then it was like Evil Squidward or something, stuff like that.
Oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Skinamarink kind of has that sort of feel to it, but for like a 90-minute movie.
Oh, okay.
And I watched that by myself at home, and you were either going to be incredibly bored by it or you're going to love it. And I remember our friend Dakota had seen that in a theater, and obviously it's not your traditional horror movie. He said so many people walked out of it.
Oh,
and
because of how bad it was, or just...
I really like it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if I looked up the audience score right now, I bet it'd be like 22% or 40%.
What was it about?
It is about these 2 kids that live in this home, and their parents are gone, and there's this demon in the house.
Okay.
And the house no longer has windows or doors.
Okay.
And that's essentially it.
Oh.
It's really just about atmosphere and mood.
Okay, and you just follow around the demon's point of view?
You don't even really know.
Oh.
You're kind of... You don't ever see anybody's face in it either.
Oh, like you don't even see the kids' faces?
No, you see their bodies, but that's about it.
Okay. But do you see the demon?
Not necessarily. There's just some imagery in it. But they also do this thing where they kind of utilize that VHS like grainy look to move as if like there's something moving around. Which is why this movie was also on my mind, because there's different moments where I was fully convinced that you can see something integrated into the tapes. And that confirmed my feeling later, because they do not just commit to the VHS taped over aesthetic. The effects feel like they're from a movie of that era too. And that's why it feels like if you go back and watch it, it would probably want you to evoke the same thing. Like, wait, pause it here, and then you could see it right there. Because there were a couple moments where I'm like, I am convinced that that's what that is.
Like you saw something beforehand?
Yeah.
I thought the same thing too. What else? I'm trying to think what else happened that I enjoyed. Because my favorite part though too was when I I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Well,
I can't think
yeah.
of it. I just like, it's like, I don't want to like just say the same things over and over,
Well,
but
no,
at the same
but I mean,
time, I'm just like, I love everything about that went on with this movie.
Everything in it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just can't find a flaw.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something. I was like, well, what did I think of it? I was like, well, I loved it, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. Like
Mm-hmm.
whenever I was thinking about that, whenever we have something negative to say,
Yeah.
is whenever we have more things on our minds. But
Yeah.
this one is just so effectively crafted
Yes.
and really evokes.
Oh, I know what I was going to talk about that I loved.
What?
When at the very end, right before everything starts to happen, and the girl's like head splits,
Yeah.
and you just see like glowing, like it was glowing and it was colorful.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that it didn't show us a demon
Yeah.
per se, right? Because I love the idea of knowing that it was something so beyond us that our minds couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect. And of course, like whenever the camera went out and you saw like a glimpse of it, that was great. But other than that, like I genuinely loved that moment too.
There's always that idea in angels and demons that they are beyond the human comprehension.
Yes.
I really liked that moment that we were talking about earlier where David Dastmalchian's character, the initial, whenever they finally bring the demon out of the girl, and this happens a lot in possession movies, and possession movies are hard to do. I know that the first Omen just came out, and apparently it's great. I haven't seen it. Yeah, I've heard great things about it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I've also heard great things about the Sydney Sweeney one that I don't remember the name of. Immaculate, yeah.
Oh.
I've heard it's very good.
I'm not a big fan of horror movies. I'm going to clarify.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy them just because I guess it's like one of those, it's hard to have no expectations when it comes to horror movies because at the end you just want to feel scared, right? I don't expect to see jump scares in movies.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
Right?
Okay,
I don't expect to see jump scares. You said you were going to talk about like a story.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was.
Okay,
but
cool.
I'll let you finish.
I don't expect jump scares or like loud noises or anything, right? I think of it where it's something has lasting impact where before I go to bed type of feeling, or even if I'm just doing my own thing, like do I think about that movie and how does it impact on my daily life in terms of like the horror aspects that it showcases.
Yeah.
And it's like the rewatchability. I also love that as well.
Whenever people say that something's scary, unfortunately, the definition of that has changed over time. I think that they mean that they're expecting jump scares.
Yeah.
And it's always an argument of like, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's that whole argument we've talked about with like thriller and horror and how I don't think thriller is a real term. And
it's a word.
No, it's a real word.
Oh.
But
what's the difference between thriller and horror?
Well, horror is a real genre that exists.
Why do you think people use thriller?
I think the reason why thriller became a real term over time and elevated horror became a term as well is because of the early 2000s, whenever every single type of horror movie was either a Saw knockoff or something jump scare filled, that people didn't really want to associate themselves with that word. There was a time back in the 70s with like The Exorcist when a movie would have been considered Oscar worthy.
Okay.
Even as a horror movie. And the Oscars definitely don't associate themselves that much with that anymore.
Yeah.
And huge prolific like the Oscars, the Golden Globes don't really want to associate with that. They're very, very picky about it. The last time was Get Out, I think.
Okay.
And the reason why sometimes people say, oh no, it's more of a thriller, which is something I hear so much.
Yeah.
And I don't really agree, is because whenever I hear something like Get Out is that, I don't agree. Whenever I hear...
I think Get Out is a horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people try and say that because I hear it, and tell me if you've heard this before. Oh, it's not scary. It's more of a thriller.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because when I tell people this movie was scary, and of course I'm not going to be having this feeling of
No, I don't see it and I don't
jump
go,
scare.
ah.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
No, when I see a jump scare every like 5 minutes.
No, it's just irritating.
Yeah,
Although jump scares, what do you think of them overall?
I think if it works, it works.
Yeah.
I think the overuse is not ideal in horror movies, but my favorite will always be in the first Insidious movie.
Oh, yeah.
That jump scare, because that jump scare works because you actually see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing when jump scares, when you actually see what like the monster that they're trying to portray in the movie, like whatever horror element, and you actually see it and not use it as a way of
just cheap
yeah.
shock value.
Yes.
So for me, the same thing. Although funny enough, the best jump scare ever to me is also a James Wan movie, but a different one.
Which one? Dead Silence.
No, I do really like that movie.
Yeah.
Though. James Wan is the fucking man, and Malignant is.
Oh,
just saying.
I'm not talking
just
about
saying.
Malignant.
Well, The Conjuring 2 has a ton of them that I think are insanely well done. You and I do differ on horror movies. I'm a lot easier on them than you are, but I also hate the ones that are cheap, and not cheap in the sense like that this movie's cheap. Cheap in the sense of like pure, just trying to go for a scare. Yeah. Just to pop out and nothing is actually happening. Like the whole grab the hand on the shoulder thing, and they're like, hey, what are you doing?
And it's like you just hear a big noise.
Yeah.
I hate hearing a big noise or some type of like sound effect like that.
But the one in The Conjuring 2 is with the nun. When you've seen it, right?
No.
You haven't seen this movie?
No, now you're gonna spoil it.
Oh man.
I've seen the first one.
Never mind, I won't explain it to you. It's something with a nun.
Something with a nun. No, now I expect to see a nun.
That scene was so scary that it made that movie, The Nun and The Nun 2, and The Nun sucks, and I never saw The Nun 2.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
No. But, no, going back to this doesn't utilize jump scares at all. Yeah. This is very much about atmosphere and mood and just the overall sensation and feeling. You can get by a lot on the sort of imagery that's at the end of this. There's something profoundly scary to me about cults, though. Yeah. And I cannot explain that to you. Yeah. Maybe it's that like hive mind mindset. But what did you think of the ending?
I love the ending. Yeah. I loved when he started saying, what did he say? Like dream or wake up or something of what the other guy was saying. Oh, yeah. When he woke him up. Yeah. Type of thing. And I loved how he kept saying that over and over again because he genuinely thought like everything was made up.
Yeah. There's this really cool thing that happens in this movie where you start to question, you're like, that hypnotist thing specifically makes you go, from here on out, what in this is actually in the show and what's the real thing? And introducing this idea of not even just an unreliable narrator, but the movie being unreliable itself to tell you what's real and what's not. At the end of it, you still kind of go, okay, well, what here is the real thing? What's your takeaway? Yeah. And my takeaway from this is that it is about the price of fame. It's about losing yourself in the idea of the pursuit of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the whole montage when he kept reliving those best moments from his show over and over again, and he was going crazy.
Because you're just kind of like, that's why I thought it was cool that they went back and showed all that. And then putting him back in the real event and showing that, and then the idea of breaking the aspect ratio to show that, I think was to sort of do the opposite of immerse us, to make to break us from the tape. Yes. And it transitions into this like, oh, this is the real thing because it is no longer in that tape. And the stuff that they have, the sort of playful stuff that they do with the VHS thing where it'll have the thing on the lower left and it said something and it changed and I don't remember quite what the words were that it said. But this is one of those movies that I did find scary in that I drove home uncomfortable, kind of.
Yes, I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, it left you with the sense of like dread and the atmosphere overall. I did really adore this. Yes. My one flaw is something that could probably be changed based on another watch.
Okay.
I think the introduction of the ending, and this is only because this is the way that these retrospects are formatted. The stuff at the beginning that they introduce, it practically 99% follows through on the format of one of those like best of a look back, because it doesn't include the conclusion of that at the beginning. So it kind of feels like, all right, the exposition stuff, what we're supposed to know.
Yes.
You kind of want the sort of wrap up of that. Not that I needed more explained to me. I definitely didn't. I just wish there would have been a bit more of... I couldn't even tell you what I would have wanted out of it. I don't think.
So you're saying that you wanted more explanation of like what was shown in the very beginning?
Not even explanation. It's just the way that the recap look back specials work.
Okay.
The one like the format of this is that it'll give you the in the 70s this show was the number 2 show in the world. Because that's the whole point, is that he's trying to be number 1. And they have that like beginning, and then it's bookended at the end by an explanation for why. And maybe it's because I was expecting that, and it's the whole idea of expectation and what you want and what you don't want. I think it just didn't quite 100% follow through on its own structure, because those are supposed to have those at the end. And outside of that, though, it's kind of like, well, I mean, what am I critiquing here, though? But I think it just sort of left me with like a... I don't need more explanation for what happened in the movie itself, because I know. I think I just wanted a bit more of that to be resolved, because without it, it just kind of feels like exposition and not much else.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I understand that. Well, I mean, what are your feelings of like, should movies always have like a certain type of structure, or should they be daring and take different approaches in how they present
necessarily things? I think it was just that I was kind of wondering, if it's going to present itself as this, shouldn't it also have that? But maybe that was supposed to be the point of the ending too, is to be disorienting. And it's up to you to determine if that's true or not. Do you think that movies should always follow a specific structure, or do you think that like sometimes movies intentionally don't have one?
You're reversing the question onto me?
Well, yeah, because you asked me. Now I'm curious about your opinion.
Oh, then no. I don't think...
No, they should?
No.
Wow.
No. No, I don't think a movie should follow any type of structure, just from like having a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Or if it's just like, if you follow a certain character in the beginning, we should still follow that character at the very end and all. It doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, what matters is how everything's being... whatever the director or writer is presenting to us.
Yeah.
And whatever message that they're trying to convey, and are we actually like following through with what the director wants us to see, or
like
whatever the message may be?
Follow through on everything that it promised? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If this movie would have compromised itself halfway through and then just, I don't know, was like, all right, we're gonna stop the taping thing and then do something else, I would have been incredibly irritated.
Yeah, I think it's just I could have seen this movie be very generic, but I just love the style too, like the filming of it and the way it looks is amazing.
It's got a very specific flair, and I don't know if it's because I want to look up the budget, but to be honest with you, I know it's minimal. It's why
some of the effects like were very visible.
I was telling you that there was the thing with his wife, which at the end, number one, really, really strong plot point, because you're like, the imagery of him sort of causing that onto her, and the heavy breathing that plays really loudly in the movie, it sort of like affects you it affected me in a certain way. A lot of that movie did, and it just kind of left me with this feeling of like, ugh. And whenever it was over, not in like me disliking the movie, I loved it, but it just the sort of compromise that this character makes, because towards the end of it, you kind of feel betrayed by him. Because you're like, dude, because you're rooting for him for part of it. And then once you realize what's going on, you sort of feel kind of guilty for also like hoping that he does this in the first place, because of what he's willing to do, to go to the lengths for. Because at the end of it, it makes you wonder, okay, so did he get number one? And they say that he did. That it's like the biggest sensation.
Oh yeah, it's
in,
like during the
yeah. But then it makes you wonder. Well, does this show continue, or is this one of those monkey's paw situations where he got number one, but at the cost of what?
Yeah.
And the guy that was the voice of morality there, his sidekick, is part of the reason why I really liked this movie, because you can tell that there's something going on.
Yeah.
But he's the one that's unaware of it. And I really liked the young girl in this because at no point can you tell if she's acting normal or weird, or she just doesn't know the real thing that she's supposed to be doing. So there's an early moment on where she's staring straight at the camera, and you're like, okay.
Oh, I feel so uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
And you can feel the innocence of her.
Yeah.
Because at the end, like, it sounds like it's her first time ever being on a show. And so she's just looking at whatever camera she sees at first.
Yeah.
But even then, that makes you so uncomfortable, especially if you just introduce the little girl saying like, "Yeah, there's a demon in her."
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
And the way she was raised, and like the sort of idea of that. That's why I also like that they do cut back to the cult stuff and everything that was shown in that, and then they integrate into the talk show too. It's also why you kind of question if the demon's separate from her, especially because of that scene with the worms coming out, because she directly says, "Why is he acting so silly?" And you have no idea if this is real or not.
Yeah.
And then in hindsight, you go, "Oh, okay, so she is really just a kid reacting to the way a kid would be on just a late night talk show."
Yeah.
And they'd probably be starstruck, and that's kind of how she's acting the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of something that I do want to talk about, because this is a low budget movie, and unfortunately this movie is subject to some controversy, not because of any plot point itself, but because of a decision to use AI for some of the art that's in this movie.
What do you mean?
The AI that was used in this movie, the art, is the owl poster on the background that you see, and the "we'll be right back" images with like the skeletons.
Oh, yeah.
And this is cause for conversation. Not that I think that this movie should be entirely disproved of or boycotted, because I've seen some of that on Letterboxd, that some people are like, I don't want to promote this movie because it uses AI art, and that's sort of an insult to real creators. I have mixed feelings on this. I do want to ask you what you think, and to preface, this is not going to affect our score at all, but I do want to ask you, what did you think of
AI?
Yeah. Well, first, what do you think of AI art in general?
I guess I don't know. I can't really give my opinions on it just because I'm not a person who creates art.
Yeah.
And so, but I understand the craftsmanship of it and the importance of it. And so I don't like AI taking away other people's not just like positions per se, like job positions, but more so in the fact of taking away somebody's like creativity, and just AI spitting out things that seem very how do I say it? Like generic. It seems,
and it definitely does that. I will agree with you in that I don't like AI art at all. It makes some funny images sometimes.
Yes.
But it also kind of causes a lot of issues. It makes some people think that they can replace artists overall.
Yes.
And I really hope it doesn't get to a point whenever real studios are going to use art, because it looks bad. It still has this issue with hands where
I remember, and during that writer strikes thing that there was happening, that they said that they were trying to make it where AI would copy and paste certain actors. So like they would pay you as the actor or actress coming for that day.
Oh yeah.
And then like they scan you, your entire body, do certain sayings and all this and that, and they would use you, and you're basically selling your body.
Yeah.
For one time.
Your look
and everything, and they can use your look for decades.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you're like, what? That's insane.
It is going to get to a point, I think, where if people keep letting it develop, that it's going to be scary and way too real. But for now, in terms of the conversation that we're having about AI art in general, I don't like the idea that it could have possibly taken anybody's job.
Yeah.
But this movie is very small. So for it to go to the lengths of that, I can only hope it's because they didn't have the budget for it.
Yeah.
And I can't really fill in the idea if that's true or not. And it won't affect my score, but the passing images, it only happens twice, I think, in the set decorations.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell, though, because somebody had uploaded the images a little bit in advance. I didn't even know what I was looking at, but I was like, oh, that's from this. And it was these skeletons, and then the pumpkin head looks kind of off.
I don't know. I'll have to look at it again. I didn't really think much of it, to be honest.
I think I'll send you a picture later, and you'll see. And then the owl, the building he's standing on, the windows look super weird.
Oh, okay.
But for me, I'm not going to defend that.
Yeah.
And at least it's not distracting.
Yeah.
And it won't affect my overall score of this movie at all. Because at the end of the day, there's still so much other work and craftsmanship put into this that I'm not just going to disprove of this movie entirely because of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they used it. You can only hope it was because they didn't have full budget to allocate towards that. But overall, Erwin.
5 out of 5.
Yeah?
Dude, I love this movie. I want to see it again. I want to own it. Like, I want to own it on Blu-ray. Everything. I can't wait to watch this again in October.
I think this is like perfect Halloween night. Mm-hmm. This is going to go straight in the catalog. The horror Halloween month, like yearly thing that I do whenever I watch a bunch throughout the month of October. This movie rocks. I think we did just spoil a bunch of it, but, but if you haven't seen it yet.
Oh, yeah. And then I think the reason why I just give it 5 out of 5, because I think I was on the fence, like, I really want to give it 4.5. I think the main reason why I give it a 5 is just because of what you said. Like, I watch a lot of videos of conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them was about the
Grove stuff.
Yeah. And so I love that element so much. And so the fact that they integrated that into this movie, I was hooked.
I love the implications of it and the not explanation of the stuff that they do there.
Yes.
There's something about cult imagery that I've mentioned that I'm just like, it gets me like grossed out immediately. Yeah. I think that's why Midsommar affected me the way that it did. I think any amount of stuff like that, it's why I see Jared Leto and I go, I do not want to go near that man.
Dude, I saw a photo of him when he was 22 and 52.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's just like the way he's aging doesn't make sense.
That he looks the same?
Either looks the same or you could argue and say he looks younger.
Did you see I think he was at the Golden Globes or something, and then he was at a table, and then he was just sitting by himself half an hour later, and then there's like this meme going around, and somebody was like, "What do you think he said to those guys?" That they all walked away.
Join my cult.
That reminds me whenever we went to ACL, and I was like, I want to leave before that man shows up. 30 Seconds to Mars. Yeah. And our friend who hates him like a lot.
Who?
Darian.
Oh.
Was like, he sent me a 30 Seconds to Mars song and was like, check out the song. And I said, this is Jared Leto's band, right?
Yeah.
And
he didn't know?
No. I thought he was just sending it as a joke, and he was like, oh, never mind. Ignore that song.
Dang, I didn't know that. Dang. That's funny.
But
that's why I don't listen to him.
Yeah.
Because I don't really like Jared Leto like that.
And we always talk about like actors. I intentionally try not to hate actors. I do not like that guy.
Yeah.
And I always get kind of sad whenever he's in anything, because the new Tron, I wish had someone else in it, because Tron Legacy is so good.
Yeah.
But I adored this movie. You're kind of talking me up on it, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I will just see it again and then probably give it 5 stars. But for now, 4.5 out of 5. I adored this a lot. If you by chance listen to this and haven't seen it yet, hopefully this will get you to see it, because we thought it was incredible.
Yes. Worth watching, guys.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. Are you going to say something?
We'll see you next time.
No, we're not done yet.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Damn.
If you could, please. Leave us a star rating.
Star rating.
This is very important. On Spotify. Or maybe a review on Apple Podcasts. Or anywhere that podcast can be found. That would mean so much to us. Anyway, Erwin, what's up next?
Oh, what's next after this?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's next?
We are probably going to review. No, we're going to review it. We're going to
Oh.
review The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare by Guy Ritchie.
Damn, what a title!
It's a very long title. I think I got it right.
My boy Henry Cavill.
You excited for it? I'm
Yeah.
pretty excited for it. I saw it was a Jerry Bruckheimer movie. That gets me excited.
A what movie?
Jerry Bruckheimer. He's the guy that produced the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh, okay.
And National Treasure.
Oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So 4.5 out of 5 from me. 5 out of 5 from Erwin.
That's right.
We loved it a lot.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.